It's your girl KV
and Celine,
and we are back with another episode of the Hood Health Report. Today we're going to talk about a hot topic from this past year, and that is the Anti-DEI movement. And for those that don't know what that stands for, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So basically the reversal of affirmative action. This has been very important because we've seen so much surrounding it as far as corporations go and schools. So it's really affecting everyone of all ages at this point. So we figured it'd be a great topic to touch on this podcast.
Right.
Who said that?
Okay, so this first article talks about DEI funders that have been hit with a lawsuit. The Black Women-Owned U.S. Venture Capital Fund counters conservatives' lawsuit, speaks on this one case. The founders of the venture capital fund devoted to funding Black women-owned businesses defended their efforts to support the underrepresented entrepreneurs in the face of a lawsuit by conservative activists accusing it of racial discrimination. The Fearless Fund leaders and its lawyers during a news conference in New York pledged to fight a lawsuit filed by an affirmative action opponent who led the successful U.S. Supreme Court challenge to the consideration of raising college admissions to promote diversity. The lawsuit was by the American Alliance for Equal Rights, a group founded by activist Edward Blum, who through another organization pursued the cases against Harvard University and University of North Carolina that led the Supreme Court in June to end affirmative action in higher education. According to the Fearless Fund, women of color businesses founders in 2022 received only 39% of the $288 billion the venture capital firms deployed. The fund aims to remedy that and counts as investors JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and MasterCard. The lawsuit alleges it's unlawfully allow only Black women small businesses owners to be eligible for a competition that awards $20,000 in grants and other resources. A civil rights lawyer who has joined Fearless Fund's defense criticizes the lawsuit and claims that the fund violated Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The law bearing racial biases in private contracts was adopted after slavery was abolished in the U.S. Civil War aftermath.
So this next article, fund sued over grant program for Black women enlists prominent civil rights attorney to fight back. So they hired Ben Crump, and if you guys don't know who Ben Crump is, he is the lawyer that likes to take on a bunch of the police brutality issues. He's worked for the families of Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and so on and so forth. He's really one of the lawyers that will take on the civil rights of Black people. So Crump feels that this case is frivolous and misguided. 13 Republican state attorney generals sent a letter to 100 of the biggest U.S. companies arguing that the court ruling on affirmative action could also be applied to private entities like employers. The lawsuit against Fearless Fund claims it is unfair for other races to not be able to apply for these grants since they are only awarded to Black women. This is such a frivolous claim because, white people make up the majority race for those whose businesses are funded through regular venture capitalists and other channels. So the fact that Black women are trying to make up for the fact that Black women-owned businesses aren't usually given this money, and now they're saying, well, that's not fair that we can't apply for these grants. It's just it's very ridiculous to bring it up so far as to sue them for this. So this organization was literally created to fill in the gap for Black women who were unable to find funding elsewhere. Today, the playing field is not leveled. That is beyond dispute. Those targeting Fearless Fund want to propagate a system that privileges some and shuts out most. They want us to pretend that inequities do not exist. They want us to deny our history, said civil rights attorney Alfonso David. Ben Crump stated that he is grateful to be able to defend the women of Fearless Fund against the enemies of equality. The Fearless Fund has invested in over 40 businesses over the past 4 years. It has deployed almost $30 million in investments and awarded hundreds of grants that total more than $3 million to Black women-owned businesses. So the guy that is going against them, that is suing them, he literally just has a foundation. Like, his whole company is targeted at making things equal for all, basically saying that Black people should not have different types of opportunities, such as affirmative action, such as things like the Fearless Fund that cater to us because nothing else does. So it's very, it's the audacity for me. It's the audacity for me.
Yeah. Sometimes when it's brought up like that, it makes me think about, like, even the all lives versus Black lives. Like, Black people aren't saying that other people's lives don't matter. We're just saying that we want equality and equity too. So, like, it's almost like when they hear the fact that we want it to be us to be on that same playing field, then they have to find any other way to get around the fact that of what we're trying to accomplish by coming up with a lawsuit or suing or figuring out a way to get rid of affirmative action, anything, which is just sad. So this next article has a few more points about the Fearless Funds case. It just kind of explains a couple of things that we haven't already touched on. And it's called the Federal Court Halts Private Grant Program for Black Female Entrepreneurs. It talks about the First Amendment and that it does not protect the Fearless Fund from awarding grants to only Black people. The purpose of the grant is to bridge the gap in venture capital funding for women of color founders, and the gap that is the result of centuries of intentional racist discrimination. So, like I was saying, it's not that we're saying that Black people want something more. We just want to be like at that same playing field.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really take away, the grant doesn't really take away from anybody, any other group being able to get stuff, because there's still thousands of hundreds of grants out there that anybody can apply for. So,
especially with them showing the figure that Black women were awarded less than 1%.
Less than 1%
of the grants that are going out to everybody else. So it's like, we have to make up for that difference for ourselves. If not, we just won't see many Black women business owners able to achieve these heights. It would take them so much more and so much longer to raise funds or get buy-in from other companies to be able to do these things. So So this next article has been something that was long in the making. I can recall I'm a big Twitter person. I can recall seeing all these opinion pieces on Twitter a few years ago, where the main one I saw, it was about a white male student. He was graduating high school, and he was mad that he didn't get into like Harvard or Brown, one of the Ivy Leagues. He was so upset. He wrote this article, and he was standing on business for himself in the fact that he didn't get accepted to these schools, and the reason was because they're giving it to all these Black and Asian students because of affirmative action. And he even went so far as to bring up particular students, but it's like, looking at their resume versus his resume, you thought that you would just get in off of being a white boy with good grades, to whereas these people that even were accepted because of affirmative action, they were on the debate club, they were on a tennis club, they were doing all of these things that made them a much more well-rounded candidate. So that didn't matter. It's just the fact that, I'm white and I couldn't get in because affirmative action is giving all these colors these spots. And it truly grew legs of its own, and hence the affirmative action being stricken from college admissions. So this next article, Duke University ends full ride scholarship program for Black students following the end of affirmative action. The Reginaldo Howard Memorial Scholarship Program, which is a top program for Black students, will be discontinued following the end of affirmative action. The current program will be replaced with one that is non-competitive and open to all students. Current scholars will not lose their funding, but no future scholarships from the Reginaldo Howard Memorial Scholarship Program will be awarded. So this scholarship program was founded in 1979 to honor the memory of Duke University's first Black student government president. The scholarship has been awarded to 15 to 20 Black undergraduate students who receive full tuition and room and board. In addition, these students were also provided with funding for independent reach opportunities as well as domestic and international learning experiences. The university is establishing a new program in its place, and all undergraduate students will be eligible to apply. The new program is a result of the combined efforts of the Office of University Scholars and Fellows in partnership with the Mary Lou Williams Center for Black Culture and will not include a competitive selection process. That there already kind of had me like, what is a non-competitive scholarship? Is that one where they just kind of like base it off a lottery, like they just, randomly pick a name out of the bunch to be awarded a scholarship? It just sounds crazy. Additionally, Duke was not the first university to eliminate scholarships for minorities following the Supreme Court ruling to effectively end affirmative action in 2023. A Republican attorney in Missouri called for the immediate adoption of the removal of affirmative action measures for college admissions, scholarships, employment, law reviews, etc. So a few states, like as soon as they did away with affirmative action, they were like, yes, do away with anything that could level the playing field, essentially. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see the fallout of that.
Yeah. This is a lot more personal to me because I get really passionate when I start thinking about like education and like people having access to those kinds of scholarships, because I was on a scholarship. That has ended due to affirmative action. Of course, I can continue to use mine if I want to continue, but a lot of them, they won't have those same opportunities. So it kind of hits more at home, because I was one of those students that if I didn't have a scholarship, I wouldn't have went to college. And it's sad to say, because through me going to college, I was able to get my bachelor's degree. I got my master's degree. I'm considering getting my doctorate degree, and those opportunities are going to be missed out on a whole bunch of other people similar to me, because it's not fair. It's just not fair. So at the end of the day, having scholarships that help people that are statistics, because they do have a lot of well-rounded pieces, but they might not be able to afford to go to a certain type of school, or they might not be able to, be selected because their father or their mom went to a prestigious school. It kind of really just, it tugs at my heartstrings a little bit more. And just reading it, it's just like when I start hearing things like, we're going to do like a non-competitive competitive approach to this. For mine, I think I wrote like 9 essays. You had to be like really dedicated in order to even get the scholarship, and I had to like express some of the concerns that I had. And I don't really have a problem even like addressing those, because I think it's important for people to understand, like, having a single parent mother, being a Black woman, not having like certain things. So it's just like for them to say, okay, we're not even going to look at those qualifications. It just kind of like, it really grinds my gears, because I also, when I was in school, I had like a 4.0. So it's like one of those things where it's like certain people are going to be overlooked. And I just feel like, as far as, it's already hard, but this is just going to make it harder. And I don't think they're necessarily thinking about, as far as from a society approach, how that's going to affect certain people, because you need people like me in the workforce. So you need people like me to be in a classroom, because we have so much to offer, and now you're just taking it away from so many students. That's my little spiel on that before I get into this next article, which just happens to like roll into it. So how do you feel, what do you feel like is going to happen in the future now that affirmative action is, taking its course?
So to dig into remember the show Scandal, where Daddy Pope had told her we have to work twice as hard.
I listen to that all the time because that's so true. It really is.
It's literally going to be that. We're going to have to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard to be noticed and to get these same opportunities just because, you know, somebody found it unfair that Black people were extended a helping hand where we had been disadvantaged in certain areas for so long. So we'll really just have to work very hard. We have to make sure that we support our own, whether that's through community scholarships, whether that's through, you know, bigging up HBCUs and making sure that we have those opportunities and that we just don't, you know,
fall by the wayside.
Fall by the wayside because they've been taken away from us. So yeah, we're gonna have to work harder, sadly enough.
So this next article, now that the affirmative action has ended, what will happen to the young, Black, and gifted? In my opinion, I believe that it's a step backwards for the country. This article mentions how in 1988, California banned the affirmative action that was through the Proposition of 209, and how studies were able to track the effects of that ban, one of which was underrepresented minorities, mostly Black people, ended up attending lower quality schools. The article also discussed the degree of attainment is also likely to decrease by Blacks and underrepresented minorities. Blacks will less likely apply to top-tier schools, causing early self-disqualification, which can lead to a lower Black college graduation rates. And I think that's true. There's a lot of schools that I probably wouldn't have applied to if I don't think I can get into it, because you have to pay for like admissions costs, you have to pay for all these other things. I know with my scholarship, they waived all that stuff, so it was one less thing that my mom had to worry about, one less thing that I had to worry about. So instead of them even putting their application out there, a lot of students might just feel like, you know, I don't think I can get in there, or if I do get in there, I'm not even sure how I'm going to be able to pay for it. It's out of state. I'm not going to do that. So they just automatically are not even going to give themselves that opportunity to go to those schools, which I think is very sad. This can also lead to Blacks making less money because they did not graduate from top schools. So it just more so pushes that cycle. So let's say you don't go to a prestigious school, or you don't go to like a highly accredited school, then now you're already going to be looked at like, oh, well, they went to blah, blah, blah college, so they don't necessarily have all the qualifications, even if they were top at that school, or even if they do take their skills very seriously. So I just, yes. And then also, due to this, the hope is that schools step up and find innovative and creative ways to ensure that the diverse candidates still get into these schools. The schools need to ensure that Black students are represented, even if it's difficult moving forward. And I think that's really important, because how quickly they were able to jump on, you know, changing these particular scholarship application forms and stuff like that. Y'all need to have that same urgency with trying to get these students back into classes and making sure that those kids are still able to be there, whether it's not through a certain scholarship, but just finding some kind of grant or some kind of opportunity for those students to still be there. Because you need, in order to have a good college experience, I feel like you do need a well-rounded person, in my opinion.
For sure. So my question is, what happens to the talent pipeline when affirmative action ends? And how might this reshape the landscape of opportunity and diversity in our workplaces and institutions? So basically, like you just said, like, it's not going to be as well-rounded as it needs to be. It's not going to be, everybody's going to be the same.
Cookie cutter. Or
basically.
But I feel like that already kind of happens, because when you put in a resume, they do it, they don't even check your resume. They have like the AI person thing checking.
Absolutely.
So it's like they want a certain thing already. And if you're not that certain thing, it's really hard for you to stand out. So it just, more so leans onto that, in my opinion. And then as far as even like the non-competitive thing that we keep on bringing, I'll keep on bringing it up because it's, to me it just doesn't make sense. It's almost like, you know, how you get like the awards sticker.
I was going to say everybody gets a participation ribbon.
Okay, you apply, so since you applied, then you get it. You're not even being selective about the process anymore, and that kind of just makes me feel like, you know, as a child or a student going into college, you sometimes want to be able to have a little bit of, you know, an accomplishment and feel like you work towards getting something.
So this next article, how the end of affirmative action reroutes the talent pipeline. Affirmative action forces companies to reconsider their recruiting and hiring practices, rethink diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and overhaul corporate culture to better achieve business goals. Applicants must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race. The decision imposes a superficial rule of race blindness on the nation. If fewer Black and brown students apply to a predominantly white institution, it could increasingly marginalize the remaining Black applicants, meaning a student could be the only Black woman in an academic major. Affirmative action practices in schools could also have a chilling effect on DEI efforts in the business world, where employers often take cues from schools they recruit from. Companies will have to reprioritize their own diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to ensure they're recruiting and retaining top talent. Some diversity advocates hope that elite schools will drop legacy admissions, which overwhelmingly favor the children of white alumni. And that was something where I was like, yes, if we're gonna drop affirmative action basis, we need to drop legacy basis for when it comes to these top tier schools, because that's doing the exact same thing.
Right.
It's favoring one subset of people over all of the rest. So that diversity advocate, whoever said that, shout out to them. Get your lawsuits going to get that as well, because it's literally doing the same thing. It's doing the same thing.
Because what's to say that person has the qualities of somebody else? You're taking up a spot just because you had somebody that was previously there.
Exactly.
So this next article, I have another question for you, KV. Do you feel like affirmative action will hurt white students, or does it only affect minorities?
I feel like affirmative action, it doesn't hurt white students either way, whether affirmative action is in place or whether it's reversed like now. It doesn't affect white students in any way. It just, I want to say this, but I don't want to sound offensive. Things like affirmative action make sure that no mediocre people are getting admitted if there is somebody who deserves that spot more. That's the only way that I look at it. So it's saying that, okay, we have this, you know, majority student who has 3.4, and, you know, they just went through school, just doing school, nothing else. But here we have this person of color who might have a 4.0, who have been in all these clubs, captain of a debate team, was on the rowing team, played basketball, all of these other activities to make them a well-rounded candidate, but because of their race, they might not be seen by some universities. Well, affirmative action helped them to be seen. So it's not like they're bringing in people that don't deserve a spot. It's just people that wouldn't have been seen in the way. So no, I do not think that affirmative action hurts white students.
So this next article, the end of affirmative action will also hurt white students, tries to explain a different standpoint on it. It says in some states, government and school officials are interpreting the decision of banning not only race-based admissions policies, but also scholarships reserved for minority students. This means that some of the minority students admitted under the new regimen might not be able to afford to go to those schools of their choice. While the general expectation is that Asian American applicants will see a bump in acceptance rates at top schools, some studies suggest Asian American admission rates may not move. It was a clear cost to Black, Latino, and Indigenous admissions, and an uncertain impact on Asian American acceptance rates. It's tempting to argue cynically that only white students will benefit from the affirmative action in the United States. Policies that differentiate by sex, by contrast, are evaluated by a lower standard. In other words, it's easier to gain judicial approval for gender-based policy than it is to get approval for race-based policy, which I thought was interesting because that is true. Because regardless of if you're black or white, you're either a girl or a guy. Well, yeah, you're either going to be a female or male, but the color of your skin, you can't really control that. Like, it affects black people still more than it will affect your gender, in my opinion.
And that's another thing. A lot of the affirmative action wasn't even targeted to giving black people a leg up. They would do stuff like reach out to white women because they were also a minority in certain fields, and also they would look at different qualifications, like maybe sexuality. So like they're like, oh, well, we have a gay white man on our team, so he's here because of affirmative action because they're in an unrepresented number as well. So it's not even like affirmative action was just like, give all the black people gold medals and great things.
Yep. Race-based affirmative action, the policy that has been demonetized as a far-left social justice intervention in education.
Start that over. Demonized.
I did say that. Okay. Race-based affirmative action, the policy that has been demonized as a far-left social justice intervention into education for decades, has existed for the past 45 years only because the Supreme Court adopted an all lives matter approach to educational disparities. Since higher education has remained majority white, even under decades of affirmative action policies, white people have numerically been the largest group to reap these diversity benefits. Living in a racially diverse environment with a high multiracial population decreases racial infantilism in white people, helping them to reduce or shed stereotypes and feelings of racial superiority.
So yeah, like I said, I included this article because I'm open to seeing the other side. I like to, okay, this is your opinion, even though it differs greatly from mine. Let's hear it. You know, I wouldn't be a true researcher if I didn't look at all aspects of an argument. But it still, you know, lends itself to the same voice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, this made me think of Rachel Dolezal. Because it's like now white people, well, for a while when affirmative action was a thing, you would see people digging up like, well, I found out that my grandfather is a quarter Native American, so that makes me colored, so I should be considered for affirmative action as well. So it kind of made me think of that when it got towards the end of that article. So with this last article, what is DEI and why is it dividing America? My question is, why does the majority feel like black people having equal opportunity mean that they are being disadvantaged? Like, you know those little shows where they go up and walk up to people on the street and ask them questions? That's one of the questions I want to see being asked on the street to random people, because it just makes no sense for, you know, you feeling like someone else getting an opportunity means that you're being disadvantaged. Like, it's so many more steps before it gets to that. So since 2023, 81 anti-DEI bills that target programs at colleges have been introduced in 28 states and in Congress, and 8 have been signed into law in states like Texas and Florida. No surprise there.
Right.
Recently, some companies have slashed teams dedicated to DEI and wealthy corporate leaders. Critics say that DEI programs are discriminatory and attempt to solve racial discrimination by disadvantaging other groups, particularly white Americans. But supporters and industry experts insist the decades-old practice has been politicized and is widely misunderstood. Diversity, what's wrong? Diversity is embracing the differences everyone brings to the table, whether it's someone's race, age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical ability, or other aspects of social identity. Equity is treating everyone fairly and providing equal opportunities. Inclusion is respecting everyone's voice and creating a culture where people from all backgrounds feel encouraged to express their ideas and perspectives.
Right.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed employment discrimination based on race, religion, sex, color, and national origin. It also banned segregation in public places like public schools and libraries. Colleges and universities also used affirmative action to boost enrollment of students of color at majority white schools. But last year, the Supreme Court gutted affirmative action, ruling that race-conscious college admission was unconstitutional. So yeah, it's just interesting to see where we're going as a society when certain things are reversed that have been a part of our society for so long. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the demographic of, the Ivy Leagues is past this. Will minority acceptance rates truly plunge? Will they still find a way to be accepted? Will they, so there's got to still be some people of color within the institutions, I would hope. Yeah. Even though they've already mentioned that a lot of places have slashed those departments that they have because of the reversal of affirmative action. So it's very interesting to see where this will go and how the landscape of corporate America and top tier schools will look in the next 10, 15 years.
I got an idea.
So that concludes this episode of the Hood Health Report. We hope you learned something. We hope this mobilizes you to, read up on laws and things that are happening in your area, happening at your institutions, your jobs, all of the things.
All of the things. So this is a wrap for this episode. I hope y'all enjoyed it. You can follow us on Instagram, which is Hood Health Report, as well as Facebook and Twitter, Hood Health Pod.
We also have a TikTok page now, Hood Health Report. Follow us there.
Yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of the links will be in the descriptions and the bios for you to click on easily.
Tap, like, comment, do it all.
Subscribe, all of the things. Share it with a friend. Yes. Share it on your social media.
If you have a TikTok, make a little video, send it.
Let us know you're out there watching, guys. All right, that's it for this episode. Bye.